2021 has had quite a few releases in terms of MMOs. PSO2 New Genesis, Swords of Legends Online, Bless Unleashed, Crowfall, Mirror 4, New World, with Elyon, Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion, and Lost Ark, all coming in the next few months as well. Yet many MMO players are avid fans of anime MMOs, with us eagerly anticipating games like Blue Protocol, Tower Fantasy, and Project BBQ. But being fans of the anime genre severely limits the kinds of MMOs available to us. So it is with that knowledge that I wanted to bring to you all a selection of anime MMOs that I believe are worth investing time into in 2021, leading into 2022, when we might finally have one of those games to satiate that thirst that we have. Now, before we go any further, I am going to be giving away a copy of any MMORPG you want: World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, New World. You pick one and I'll send it to you. All you need to do to win is be actively subscribed to this channel, so make sure you go down and click that subscribe button if you're not, as this giveaway is only for actual subscribers, and I can see the little icon that shows me if you're actively subscribed or not. Then go down into the comment section below and tell me what is the greatest MMORPG memory that you have. Also, did you know that we stream on Twitch every week? You should totally come by and join us. We host giveaways like this all the time, and we play through MMOs new and old every Tuesday, every Saturday, and every Sunday at approximately 3:30 p.m. Now, let's talk games. Aura Kingdom is by far the most modern traditional anime MMORPG that you will find in this list. Developed by X-Legend and published by Gamigo, Aura Kingdom was released in North America back in 2014 and went on to become one of the more successful anime titles. It utilizes a tap-target combat system, provides players a plethora of different classes that all have their own unique play styles, weapon types, and skills. It has a beautiful anime-inspired world, albeit the zones themselves are segregated, meaning that there are loading screens that are separating each area from one another. I want to say that it has a narrative, but this is an X-Legend game. They're known for several things. Story is not one of them. Now, Blade and Soul is, well, some people are in disagreement as to whether this is or is not an anime MMO, but for the sake of argument here, I've decided to include it. Developed and published by NCSoft, Blade and Soul was released in North America back in 2016, going on to become one of the most popular free MMOs for years. It utilizes an action combat system, one of the best in the genre actually. There are multiple different humanoid races to choose between, a detailed character creator, a lot of diversity between classes, and a competitive PvP scene. It has a large, beautiful, segregated world filled with quests, dungeons, and field bosses. It also has what is generally considered to be one of the better narratives out there in terms of an MMO, and is one of the reasons that I played the game as long as I ultimately did. Dragonist is considered by many to be the pinnacle of the anime MMO genre. Developed by Identity Gaming and previously published by Nexon, Dragonist released in North America in 2011 and quickly became a staple of good combat and quality PvP, something that 10 years later is still considered by many gamers to have some of the best the genre has to offer. It utilizes a fast action combat system and various different classes to choose from. Unlike previous titles in this list though, Dragonist is a semi-instanced MMO, with the world being connected but zones being split between instances of up to a few different players. It has a narrative, but it isn't nearly as fleshed out as Blade and Soul's. Sword is similar to Dragonist in so that it features a lot of instanced environments, yet does enough to set itself apart. Developed and published by KOG Games, Sword was released in 2011 and found a lot of success in the genre. Up until this point, very few games of this specific type released. And by type, I refer to the fact that Sword is a horizontal side-scrolling MMO, one of the few MMOs developed with this perspective in mind. It utilizes action combat, it has a variety of different classes and subclasses as you continue to level. It features a large number of instance zones, but there are larger public areas for players to explore as well. There's a lot of narrative present, with each character you choose having their own distinct personality. Flyff is actually a personal favorite of mine. I played this game quite extensively over a decade ago when I was looking for a replacement for Tales of Pirates. Developed by Gala Lab and published currently by Webzen, Flyff released back in 2005. Yes, it is really that old, and so am I. Wow, this is a traditional old school MMO with a lot of grind necessary to progress. It utilizes a tab target combat system. It has multiple different classes, each with their own unique set of subclasses. It features a large world to explore, albeit with segregated zones. It also has a semblance of a narrative. I'm honestly not sure how strong it is, as I barely even recall it. What I do recall though was the very first time that I hopped on my broomstick and just flew through the sky. That was something else. Like Aura Kingdom, Grand Fantasia is a traditional anime MMORPG developed by X-Legend and published by Gamigo. Although this was released back in 2009 in North America, yeah, it is a tad on the older side. It utilizes a slower tab target combat style, provides multiple classes to choose between, which each have several levels of subclass advancements to choose between as you continue to level. The game features a large world, albeit like multiple of the aforementioned titles. The world itself is segregated, and as with Aura Kingdom, the narrative left a little to be desired, and by that I mean I don't recall there really even being one. After initially shutting down a couple years ago, Kritika relaunched onto Steam as Kritika Reboot in 2019, this time with the developer Elyon opting to publish it globally. Kritika is one of the few hub MMOs currently available online. Continent of the Night Seal, Dungeon Fighter Online, Phantasy Star Online 2, Soul Worker and Vindictus are other notable titles that share very strong similarities. As it is a hub MMO, the majority of the game takes place in central hubs, where players group together, they chat, and they partake of social activities while waiting for instance dungeon queues to pop. Thankfully, this game has both some very fast, very fluid, flashy action combat, along with a narrative to help keep you entertained. Mabinogi is, I fear, the only MMORPG of its kind. This is what Period Chronicles was supposed to replace. Developed by DevCat and published by Nexon, Mabinogi released back in 2008 in North America to critical acclaim. This was a social MMO that provided a traditional MMO experience, but went so far above and beyond just that. And as such, even by today's standards, Mabinogi has a very steep learning curve. While the game employs an interesting type of tab target combat, a lot of the game takes place out of combat with non-combat features like life being something you can pursue, if real life wasn't already enough of a life for you, of course. While Mabinogi utilizes a segregated world split via loading screens, it's also one of the largest, most expansive games that I've seen in the anime subgenre, and still remains one of the larger games in the genre as a whole. Long after its sequel MapleStory 2 is shut down, the original MapleStory lives on. MapleStory, developed by Wizit and published by Nexon, released back in 2005. Yeah, this is one of the oldest anime MMOs on the market, and to date, still remains one of the most populated anime MMOs that you will come across. MapleStory is an interesting title. On the one hand here, it's one of the few horizontal side-scrolling MMOs out there. Dungeon Fighter and Elsword are two other popular MMOs that shared this specific graphical style, yet at the same time, while both of those games are fairly instanced, MapleStory is not. MapleStory is a 100% full-fledged MMORPG. You'll find hundreds if not thousands of other players around the world, scattered via its hundreds of zones, which are all segregated, granted, all grinding to hit max level, which takes way too long in my opinion. Combat is very fast action, like unbelievably fast as you continue to level up. You'll often find yourselves, and I'm not kidding here, launching yourself around the map horizontally, even sometimes vertically, trying to retain some sense of where you are and where you're going. And the narrative, wow, that is by far one of the best parts of this game, with every class, every character having their own unique story, and countless standalone stories in the form of themed dungeons to complete as well. Now, I am going to tackle these two games as one. On the one hand, PSO2 is an instanced hub MMO, much like Kritika Reboot. There exists a central hub here that you can take quests from and that you deploy to various different instanced areas. Whereas New Genesis has a large open world, albeit zones are segregated and there are concurrent player limits on how many players can exist within a certain area at any given time before being sent to a separate instance of the same area. Both PSO2 and New Genesis utilize an action combat system, although New Genesis makes its predecessors look highly dated by comparison, and that might be a contentious opinion, but it is my opinion nevertheless. And while both games are linked together in terms of the core game and even the stories, they each have their own separate narrative that drive the game forward. Granted, New Genesis is lacking in a lot of content right now due to launching so recently, as PSO2 launched in 2020 in North America, but 2012 in Japan, and New Genesis in 2021 all around the world. Ragnarok Online is one of the only MMOs of its kind, and thank God, because I could not imagine having to dedicate my time to 2 different MMOs like this. Developed and published by Gravity, Ragnarok Online released in 2003. Yeah, this is one of, if not the oldest anime MMO, and honestly, this went on to become one of the grandfathers of the genre. Ragnarok Online features a point-and-click movement system with a click-to-attack combat system. There's no cycling through targets with tab like in more modern titles. Interestingly, Ragnarok also uses an interesting sprite-style graphical system, which is something that almost no MMO does anymore. I know this is partly a result of the time it was developed, but it's something that I genuinely miss. One thing that made this game unique though is its ridiculous class system that had a set number of classes and a bajillion other subclasses as you continue to level. Yeah, that I don't miss. Now, after Gameforge shut down Soulworker earlier this year, players thought that was the end of the game, yet Lion Games, the developers behind the popular title, decided that they wanted to publish the game themselves, globally this time, and the game has been a massive success ever since, averaging several times Gameforge's numbers every day. Soulworker is a hub MMO, so it isn't going to appeal to everyone. Nevertheless, this is one of my favorite MMOs. I've come back to this game repeatedly over the course of the last few years, and was one of the first MMO tubers to actively cover it before it came to the West. It utilizes a fast action combat system better than almost any other anime title in the genre. Sure, it has some limitations in terms of class diversity, but this game looks and plays incredibly well. There's a narrative present, but honestly, I feel as though narratives are something that hub MMOs have not as a means of enthralling you in the game world, but rather to give you something to do in between instances. And finally, we have Tree of Savior. Tree of Savior is an interesting title. It's generally regarded as being the spiritual successor to Ragnarok Online, being developed by and published by IMC Games, releasing in North America in 2016. However, even after 5 years, Tree of Savior still has not managed to find an active player base, with many players writing the game off after its initial failures. The game utilizes an action combat system and provides, much like Ragnarok, a very large, deep and diverse class system with a lot of paths for players to take that truly provide an added layer of customization that players can take advantage of. The world is open, albeit segregated. There's no instance content here. The entire world is traversable, with players able to go out and group up and participate in content together. There's also a narrative present, and honestly, it isn't half bad. And that is everything. They are 14 anime MMORPGs that I think are worth investing time into if you're waiting for something new in the anime scene to play. But hey, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and pick something yourself and try it out.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make